Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Greta, and I'm the dietitian at John Stoddard Cancer Center. So I have another great recipe for you, and this one could not be simpler. It is a one-pot pasta dish, which is always great. One pot, not a lot to clean, but it is a healthier take on everybody's favorite tuna noodle casserole. But this one cuts out a lot of that heavy, creamy sauce. It makes a much lighter dish. It also incorporates lots of seasonal veggies. We're going to have arugula and asparagus, and it is delicious. So we're going to start with some shallots. We need about a cup of sliced shallots, so it's about 3 or 4, depending on how big your shallots are. So, a lot of people ask, well, what's really one shallot? To me, that's one shallot. Sometimes they come in sort of 2 chunks. I still kind of count that as one shallot. If you don't have shallots, you absolutely could replace them with some yellow or white onion. That would be totally fine too. So we're just going to slice our shallots kind of thin. So I'm just going to trim the edges off and sort of peel the outside off. And Squeaky Toy has made its appearance for the night, right on cue. I don't know that anybody believes me that my dog does not play with his squeaky toy any other time except when I'm making videos. Who knows? All right. So then if it's in 2 chunks, you can kind of take them apart. And then I'm just going to slice through them sort of nice and thin, just like that. And like I said, we want a yield of about a cup, so that might too gauge how many shallots. So if they're really small shallots, you might need more. They're kind of big, like mine are sort of big. You might need less. I always say in the veggie department, more is better. So if there's extra, hooray, that's great. I always tend to throw things in. I'm not a big measurer when it comes to a lot of the veggie components of my recipe because I always feel like it can handle more. And the hardest part about shallots is getting the skin off. Just like garlic, my other favorite thing to chop. All right, come on, skin. There we go. All right, that was a little easier. Shallots are nice. They have a nice flavor to them. Use them quite a bit in recipes that you do cook, but yet there's you're gonna taste it. Doesn't quite have the same flavor. It's got a little. I feel like it has just slightly more flavor than just a regular onion, but not in an offensive way. All right, see, they're always in sort of 2 pieces. Sometimes they look like they're 1 chunk and then you cut them open and it's actually 2. So I still, like I said, I still count that as 1, even if it's, this one actually had 3 chunks and I opened it further. It's in 3 chunks. These sneaky shallots. All right, just about there. There we go. It's nice because we can just slice them. You don't have to worry about them being really small. Shallots just sort of melt down when you cook them, which is nice. But a little yellow onion would work too. All right. My shallots are chopped. Nice thing about this recipe too, there's not a lot of chopping in it. All right. The next thing we're going to chop, if I can reach into my sink, is asparagus. Everybody's favorite spring veggie, right? So we're going to use a whole pound of asparagus. And we're going to trim our asparagus down to about 1-inch size pieces. These are kind of skinnier asparagus. If you have thicker ones, they might take a little bit longer to cook in your pot, and that's fine. I like to do the snap test because that tells me what the tougher part is and what the more tender part is. And I don't want the tougher part. It's very chewy. So you can kind of snap one off, and then I assume the rest of my bunch will be about the same. So then you can kind of line them up to the heads and then chop, and you're just chopping off that tougher part. So I'm going to keep working on my asparagus, and I will be right back. Okay, so I have the tougher part of my asparagus trimmed down, and now I'm just slicing them into about inch-sized pieces. What I just do is sort of line them up. I'll show you right here so I can get my camera down so you can see it. I just sort of line them up like this, and then just go cut, cut, cut. That's the stems. The little tips are usually nice and tender, so we just leave those intact. So again, line them all up from the trimmed part. I'm going to slice them up. Just like that. We leave the little tender tips intact. If you grow your own asparagus, you absolutely could use your own. I know lots of people do. I had never seen asparagus growing wild until I moved to Iowa. So I thought that was kind of neat. We don't have wild growing asparagus in New Jersey. All right, last one. I'm going to line it up. Slice, 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 and perfect pieces. All right, so that pretty much takes care of all of our chopping for this. So I'm going to move you over to my stove in a minute, and we're going to start putting it together. Okay, I'm over at my stove, and we're going to just go ahead and put this all together. So I have over here on my stove top, I'm going to tilt it over, a nice big high pan here. I've got my shallots in here. I've also added just 2 tablespoons of butter. That's really the majority, the fat that we're going to add to this. There's a little bit of Parmesan cheese, but there really isn't a lot of fat in this. If you'd rather do a plant-based fat, you certainly can switch to olive oil and do that instead if you want to make this a pescatarian dish without any kind of animal products in it. I'm also going to add about 1 3/4 cup of stock. This is my homemade chicken stock. You could use veggie stock again if you'd like to make this more of a pescatarian dish. You could do that. I'm also adding 2 cups of water, just like that. And then I have just a half a box of pasta. I like a pasta that's got some kind of hollow component to it, and I really like this recipe called for cavatappi. It's a nice curly-Q kind of pasta. It really has some ridges on it, so when you have little ridges, it likes to hold on to a lot of the flavor to it. So this is actually only a half a pound of pasta. I used the other half last time I made this recipe. So the nice thing about adding lots of veggies is that it actually cuts down the amount of pasta in the dish. Instead of using a full pound of pasta, it's only using half a pound. So we're going to bring this up to a boil, and then we're going to turn it down to about medium-high heat and let it simmer. We're going to have to stir it pretty frequently, just kind of keep an eye on it. It's just going to be about 5 minutes that we'll have to stir it, and then we'll come back and we'll go ahead and add our veggies. Okay, so this recipe also has a little bit of lemon juice and lemon zest in it. It adds a really nice brightness, and it works really well with the tuna. So I'm going to go ahead and do that step right now because I did want to show it to you. So we need some lemon zest. So you can use a microplane just like this, or you can get out your cheese grater, and on the back there's little tiny holes. You probably never used them before. That's actually the same size as a microplane, so you can use that too. You don't need special instruments. So I'm just going to go ahead and zest my lemon. And you always want to zest your lemon before you juice it because it's really tricky to hold on to, and you'll end up squeezing it and losing the juice. So it's always best to go ahead and zest your lemon first. And then you can go back and juice your lemon. And then we're going to need about 4 teaspoons of lemon juice. All right, there's my zest. And I'm going to cut my lemon and go ahead and juice that. There's my lemon zest. And here's my lemon juice. I always hope to get about a tablespoon of lemon juice from a half a lemon. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm gonna just squeeze both because we need 4 teaspoons. That's just over a tablespoon. Any extras I always save for something else, or sometimes I just throw it all in. It's good too. You could throw it into your water. All right, so we've got our lemon ready, and we're gonna come back and keep an eye on our pot and add our asparagus in just a little bit. Okay, so I'm back over my stove. It's been about 5 minutes and my pasta is doing really well. You can see it's sort of soaked up a lot of that liquid, so it's starting to thicken just a little bit. The pasta should be just al dente because it's going to cook a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and now add my asparagus. The asparagus only needs a couple minutes. Mine were pretty skinny, so they won't need a whole lot of time. So we're just going to give this about 2 minutes for these asparagus to start to soften, and then we'll come back and we'll add the rest. Okay, so my asparagus is cooked. It's still nice and green and has a little bit of bite to it, which is perfect. I'm going to go ahead and now add my arugula. You can do as much or as little as you want. If you are opposed to the flavor of arugula has a very distinct flavor. It's a bit peppery. So if you're not a fan of that flavor, you could absolutely substitute spinach or some chopped kale. So we want about 5 ounces of arugula, which is quite a bit. So I like to add this first and sort of let it wilt down a little, because if you add the cheese right away, it just all gets into like one big clump. And you can see it pretty quickly just starts to melt away. And this is where you can see adding all this great veggie really increases the portion without adding significant calories, and then certainly adds to the nutrient density of the dish, which is amazing. All right, so our arugula is all mixed in. It's nice and wilty. I'm going to add our lemon zest and just about a half a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. So I've talked about this before in some of my other classes. Buy your cheese in a block and grate it. I know it takes an extra few minutes, but it is less expensive that way. And when you buy already grated cheese, they add things to it, some fillers to it, and starches to keep it from sticking together. That's why it doesn't stick together in the bag. So buy fresh cheese. It's more economical anyway. All right, so once our cheese and our zest is all mixed in, I'm going to go ahead and add our lemon juice, our nice freshness. And then I'm going to mix in our tuna. So it does call for tuna packed in oil. I feel like in this case, a tuna in oil is appropriate because there really is not much fat in this recipe, and you want to get some flavor from the tuna. The tuna packed in oil just tends to have a little bit more flavor. You certainly, if you really need to cut the fat in the recipe, you could do tuna packed in water. You will notice there was a chunk missing because as soon as I opened these cans, I had every furry pet I own in the kitchen. So yes, everybody got a taste of tuna. I'm going to turn my burner down a little bit so it's not screaming at me so much. And you want to keep it in kind of nicer chunks. You don't want it to get it shredded up too small. So remember, tuna offers us all those nice omega-3 fatty acids. So we're just going to kind of break it up a little, stir it through till it just gets heated through. And That's really it. That's probably one of the fastest dishes we've ever done together. So easy. One pot cleanup. Didn't have to turn our oven on. Not a lot of chopping. It's just about perfect. So there we go. Tuna noodle casserole in one pot. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Thanks again for joining me. Enjoy.